Today I want to talk to you about GDPR, that is the General Data Protection rules by the European Union. And I want to start off with a story related to GDPR, which some of you may have seen. Recently, the German city of Roth had to change a large tradition that they had for the Christmas season in that particular city. The tradition was that children would put messages on a tree or in a box, I'm not quite sure, in which they would have wishes to St. Nicholas or Santa Claus. And the wishes would extend from they want to visit the mayor, they want to see the fire brigade, or something like that of the sort. And they would put their address on their wish lists so that the city could answer it. And they would organize different trips and different things for the children to do. Now, according to Germany's own rules, that was previously questioned, but then could be resolved with a lockbox. So before they were hanging on the tree and people could see the addresses, so they put them in a box so nobody can see the addresses. Now, because of GDPR, the data protection rules which came into force recently, the city is not at all allowed to do that anymore because there's no establishment of consent of the children to have the addresses on it. So basically, the parents would have to agree that the children give out the addresses, and that's really difficult to do. It's too much administration cost, and therefore it had to be cancelled. Now, GDPR also says, for instance, that users do not only know what they provide their user information for, but that they can also revoke all information as soon as they want to. So companies don't really know what user information is worth anymore, because at any moment in time a user can say, well, I did consent previously to giving my information, but now I want it completely to stop, and I also want you to delete everything that I've provided to you. Of course, user information is used by companies to have information on the users and to provide you with advertising. And that's why, for instance, you get very interesting advertising, such as the ones where you see, I don't know, I, for instance, recently got a jumper on Facebook, and it said, people born in Luxembourg in January are awesome, something like that. I don't really think it's that big of a deal if that happens. And advertising is, however, is after all how these websites make money. That's how the websites that I get paid by make money. Nobody wants to pay for journalism anymore, and nobody wants to pay a general subscription fee. And what you get is ads. Somehow money needs to be made. And what is interesting is also the compliance cost. Of course, the administration of respecting all those rules is very large and very difficult to figure out. So companies need lawyers. Now, big companies can afford those sort of compliance costs, but smaller companies have a tougher time. So Forbes established that small and medium-sized companies have a cost of about $500,000 US to figure out how to respect EU user information and data privacy rules. And what you see is that still a number of American companies and media outlets are still blocking the access of EU-based users because they simply do not want to spend the money on those compliance costs. And what is interesting, specifically to just come back on the example of the city of Roth, what they did in the end was that a Bavarian radio station provided a form to be filled out online that had all the legalese printed on it. So the parents just had to tick the box and say, okay, I agree that my child, blah, blah, blah. However, that's just on the goodwill of that radio station. If they had to do it by themselves, the city would not have been willing to produce something of that sort. So in the case of that city, it might have worked, but for many companies, the compliance costs are high, and the compliance costs are then paid by the consumers. So if your local startup provides a service to you, and that company, that startup, has to pay a lot of money to a lawyer to figure out the compliance costs, like to figure out all the regulations, then you, the end consumer, is the one who will have to pay those costs, because there is really nobody else who can pay it. So I don't think these rules should be hideously complicated. I believe that local communities can make clear rules on that, depending on the local situation. I believe that we can also have a lot of agreements on mutual understanding, that we're not all very awful. If you sell your car to your best friend, you have some understanding. Not everything needs to be written down. I think individuals should figure out what their priorities are. If I want to sign up to a social media network and I want to know everything, I'm going to require that of that social media network. I don't believe it's bureaucrats who should be imposing all those really, really complicated and ultimately expensive rules on everyone. But feel free to disagree. Thank you for watching the video, and see you next time.